conversation with Mr. Abhishek Kapoor, Senior Executive Editor of the Republic Media Network on Beyond the Tariff Barriers.
All right, we are continuing the conversation. You had a very engaging day understanding business, economics, Indian economy, India's march to progress, Atmanirbharta, India's 2047 vision of a Viksit Bharat. And of course, this conversation is going to continue into the evening. Now, when we talk about economy and our progress and our ambition to become a developed country, trade and business is the core that really drives that ambition, because once you trade, you grow your GDP, your per capita, and then that's how, in modern parlance, you become a developed society. And when we talk about trade, we have to talk about our biggest or largest trade partnership, which is by and large with the United States. I think a couple of years back, China did sort of take a slender lead, but we are back to being the largest trade partners. With us, Rahul Sharma, Managing Director of US-India Business Council. It's the body which essentially acts as the nerve center of all the trade that takes place between India and the United States. Am I right, Mr. Sharma? But I was just having a conversation with him, and I told him in tune with my mood, maybe, kya se kya ho gaya dekhte dekhte. Something's gone amiss in the last few months, and let's try to understand where we stand and how do we go forward from here. So let's begin the conversation. Welcome, Mr. Sharma, again. And natural allies, natural partners, the partnership of the century, everything was going good. And then suddenly something happened this January, and things have been not good. Similar scene with the other relationships of the United States, but more so with India. Your assessment of where we stand, quickly, then we take this forward.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. I must commend Republic for a wonderful campus out there. I was quite amazed. It's my first time here, and thank you for having me here. I think we need to look at the India-US relationship in a long term. We must understand that there has been a disruption in the world, and just about every country has been impacted in some way.
Sorry to be interjecting. You're being more diplomatic than diplomats, saying there has been a bit of a disruption. It's not just a bit of a disruption.
Yeah. So, well, there is disruption, so let me put it that way. But I think we have to, where we are sitting at this point in time, we have to understand a couple of things. One is, eventually it boils down to national interest. And the way the United States has changed in the during this year is largely because of what happened in the elections there, and what were the key issues in the elections there.
Let's cut the chase. It's Donald Trump.
Yeah, it is Donald Trump. And
thank you for your attention to the matter.
But given what happened in the elections and the election of President Trump, and his worldview and the promises that he made to his constituents, we are looking at what the changes that have taken place. Within that, of course, India also is a player, largely because from India's point of view, it was always, a lot of investment was done in the relationship in the last 25 years. Successive US presidents and successive Indian governments have had fantastic relationships. And these relationships kind of was across the levels, It was business, it was defense, it was geopolitical. It was a clear understanding in the United States that India was a growing power, it needed to be supported. And that changed. And that sudden change, of course, creates problems. Like any change, one has to be ready for it. And this was one of the changes I think nobody was ready for. So in that sense, I think where we stand today is definitely a situation which is far different from the same time last year. But the reality is that if we should try and look beyond just the trade deal. Trade deal is important, and it is definitely impacting businesses. And the government here is aware of it. The government here is taking steps to address those concerns. The negotiations have been on. Just today, the Commerce Secretary, who was actually the chief negotiator before he took this new role, said that there's an expectation that by the end of the year, we would probably have the deal go through. So I think there is a degree of optimism that needs to be kept in place, because it is very easy to be subsumed by negativity. I think India and the United States are two very mature democracies. There has obviously been a shift in some of the conversations that President Trump has been having. I think we know President Trump and Prime Minister Modi had phone conversations. There is a new US ambassador who's going to be here early next year. We have gone without a US ambassador for almost a year now, right? So it'll be exactly probably a year before the new ambassador comes in. And I think it's important to have that line of conversation, because when you have the bureaucracies talking, then the conversations get to a different line. Right. So we are seeing all that happening now, which means we have hope that things would get very clear.
So I want to pick up on this point that you made, that in this overall scenario of red, let's not lose sight of the optimistic part of it. So let's differentiate between what's the red, what's pessimistic part, and what's the optimistic part. The pessimistic part is that the government relationship has taken a nosedive. The pessimistic part is the unpredictability. Somebody in the government told me that we are living from tweet to tweet, on the Truth Social post to Truth Social post. Then again, there is this larger aspect, the strong Indian diaspora, the fact that almost 80% of the top 20 American corporations have Indian origin CEOs. The fact that Fortune 500 companies essentially are run by Indian talent, based out of the United States. The fact that while there is this red hot spot at the White House, our equation with Foggy Bottom is fantastic. Our equation with Pentagon is fantastic. So there are obviously these threads of optimism which you would want to focus on. How do you make sure that the ship is kept steady by these non-White House elements of our relationship?
So, if we look at the 10-year defense framework that's just been signed, I think that's an important signal. India and the United States are doing joint, exercises, military exercises. The Indian naval chief was visiting the United States. And I think there are things that are happening in that sense where the conversations are on. And I think it's extremely important to understand that good conversations lead to good results. And that's exactly why there's hope that this trade deal, which is kind of taken, how do I put it, a precedence on over many things, has to be looked at positively. I think the view from the Indian government is that it should be done, it can be done, and it will be done. And that's the positive part. Right? I think I also want to, the other piece you mentioned is the diaspora. I think people-to-people relationship between the two countries is very strong, right? And that adds to whatever is happening. In the last several years, you've had a lot of Indians going in the technology sector, working there. And the business is going just fine, actually.
Are you sure business is fine? I mean,
I'm talking from
tariff impact?
I'm talking from that destination, from that point of view. From here, yes. I mean, there are certain sectors that have been impacted, but the India-US business ties, when you're talking about companies, I don't think there is a problem there. And you see many GCCs coming in. You're looking at US companies are not saying that we don't like India, we don't want to be here. They want to be here, and it's a good market for them to be here. So that's a great advantage.
Yeah, actually, there are two ways of looking at this GCC's development. One is, of course, that the American corporations really want to have a finger in the pie insofar as India is concerned. They want to be here. They want to be physically present here. The other aspect is, of course, then they're eating into our software corporations and their businesses. But having said that, tell us, with your vantage, Mr. Sharma, how sustainable is this, or how lasting is this damage going to be insofar as the tariff war is concerned? It's not specific to India, obviously, but then there are some consequences which would be lasting and some consequences which would end with the present presidency. So how do you see that going forward?
Like I said earlier, I think we are two mature democracies, and like two friendly nations, there are some disagreements. But in the long term, if you really look at it, the two governments will find ways to resolve the differences, because it's in the interest of both countries. It's in the interest of both the businesses of both countries. Because interestingly, earlier there was a presentation that was going on which was talking about the technology piece, and the kind of technology that comes in from the United States. If Indian companies are looking for technology, then one has to figure out where do you get that technology from. Whether you get it from the United States, or the other potential is whether you get it from China. And that is where the whole piece falls into place. Given the fact that the people-to-people relationship continues to be strong, business-to-business relationship continues to be strong, I think those two will play on to ensure that the government-to-government relationships also become stronger.
All right, you mentioned China. How much of it is China still a factor in determining the US-India, the trajectory of US-India relationship? There was this post-COVID situation where you were just talking China +1, and that +1 was India. You were talking about Indo-Pacific, and India was essentially the pivot. And the Americans would have been more than happy and willing to really let India have a go at China. Maybe they were disappointed that we did it on our own terms. We did not let the Americans decide when we are going to have a go at China and how much of a go we are going to have on China. So how critical a factor is the fact that irrespective of American calculations, China is no more a bugbear. It's a reality that the United States has to deal with. And it's breathing down their neck. So in that situation, do you get a sense when you talk to people in DC, in New York, in the Silicon Valley, that the Americans understand that they are on borrowed time in this Thucydides trap for power that they are with China, and in that they should keep India on their right side?
So whether the piece on the borrowed time will tell, But I think the reality is that I will go back to what I said right at the start. Every country looks at its own national interests. And that is the critical part. When the world changes, and there is some degree of geopolitical upheaval, every country has to sit back and see what is good for it, right? And I think India has to look at things from that prism. I think India has to look at what is of interest to it, just like the US will look at what's of interest to them, and China would look at what's interest to them. Things are at that stage where, at this point in time, they're still bubbling. So it's difficult for me to predict what's going to happen. But I think from a national point of view, any national point of view, that national interest is something which comes right up front.
You think the government? You think the government of India is handling the situation well, or has handled the situation well till now?
In what sense?
The overall dynamics, the kind of nosedive the relationship took. You think we managed to, weather the turbulence well?
So when
or you think something more could have been done?
So when I hear from our member companies,
let me be more specific. Like when you deal with these, when you engage with the American corporations, the CEOs, do they say that, oh, the Commerce Ministry here, the Ministry of External Affairs here, the Government of India here, the Prime Minister's office here could have done more?
I think most of the people that I speak to talk about what is the impact on business, right? Geopolitics, of course, impacts business. Unpredictability, of course, impacts business. No business wants unpredictability of any kind. So there are concerns.
But the unpredictability is on their side.
When I say predictability, I'm not saying this side or that side. I'm just saying unpredictability. Because unpredictability can be from any side. Uncertainty can come from any side, any point, right? So it's not about this from India or from the United States. From a business point of view, when you're looking at it, you would always take a larger view and see what are the potential impediments, right? And continuity is something, business continuity is something which is of paramount importance. So that impacts every decision a business takes. So there are concerns over these uncertainties that exist at this point in time. There's also hope that these uncertainties would be addressed very quickly, and we can all get back to doing things the way we were. Because let's look at it. If there is a robust trade deal which helps both sides, it is good for business. Business can look at a 500 billion trade situation between the two countries.
You think it's still possible? I think we put that figure out between the two leaderships just in the month of March or April. And now we are in November and December, and it already seems so distant, that sentiment that we could be touching $500 billion before the end of the decade.
If you look at it from a geopolitical point of view, anything is possible. If you look at business point of view, anything is possible. As long as there is continuity and predictability of the ground situation, it's always going to be good. And that's what we are looking at. What we are saying is that if there is a robust trade deal which works well for both sides, then we have a great opportunity ahead. Because if you look at it, the defense piece is going well. India is now buying LPG from the United States. The energy piece is taking shape. The AI piece is beginning to take shape. The technology piece in terms of investments and what companies are looking at is already in good place, and will get better. So overall, if you look at the things, if you can remove certain uncertainties that are still around, it's going to be good.
Again, I am getting a sense, Mr. Sharma, talking to you, that I'm talking to a secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Very difficult to get things out from you. But you see, the uncertainty again is on the other side of the Atlantic, not here. So,
And that is, I think that is understood. From India's point of view, that is understood well. And that's what I'm saying, that India is and has, like any other country, to look after its own national interest and do what is best for it. If you are going to be in a trade deal which is going to be not the right deal, then there is a problem. So the effort is on to have the right deal. So once that right deal is into place, then you will have a situation.
What's that right deal?
Right deal is a deal which, I mean, if you were sitting down to do a deal with somebody, what would be a right deal for you? Something that works for both of you, right? That's the right deal.
Is 15% a right deal?
I don't think I am the right person to comment on that, because it will depend on where.
You have an understanding, like you speak to both the sides, you would know exactly what's the right deal.
I think discussions are still on. And I think we hope that we would get somewhere which is acceptable to both countries.
Right. And I want to get a sense from the audience also. When you talk about America and India, one issue which touches most families these days, and that's actually a measure of the kind of connect that is there between the two nations, is the issue of visas. Anyone here sitting who has waited for an appointment for visa, for an American visa, has not got one? How many months? It took a year, it took more than a year for an appointment. Anyone else? So that's the situation. The average visa time for getting an appointment here from US Embassy or any of their consulates is minimum 6-7 months. She says 1 year plus. So, I mean, this obviously is going to have consequences for trade also, as much as people-to-people relationship. So, are you sure that these things are being taken care of?
The reason behind delays in visas is something that the US government has to answer, because they have to look at how best that they can deal with the situation. Whether it's going to have an impact, I think just to look at some data, I think there's definitely been a drop in the number of Indian students going to the United States. But there has been alternatively an increase in Indian students going to countries like UK, even Russia, and some other countries. Again, it boils down to one simple fact: where are the opportunities available? And what does it require to get to those opportunities? So I think we are, again, in a situation which is a disruption from a student's point of view. And when that will get fixed is something that I don't think I will be in a position to answer, because that's something that the USG has to work out.
Yeah, so ultimately everything comes down to the USG. And as I said, we are living from tweet to tweet. When I remember 2014, when President Obama had come, and among other things, we were at about $80 billion of trade, And Obama, I remember, mentioned, does $100 billion look ambitious? No. But now we are at $200+ billion, talking about $500 billion. So despite all this turbulence, and you think, how do we take this forward in a manner that we shield the larger relationship and, of course, strengthen the trade even further?
So I think, you have to understand, there was a massive disruption in terms of COVID, and the world took time to recover from that. But despite that, the bilateral ties between India and the United States and the trade between India and the United States bloomed. And we are still at a situation where we are seeing a drop in exports. There is a deficit which is in favor of India, which is what President Trump was talking about right at the start. How do you fill that up is the big question. And that is something that the two governments have to talk about, discuss the possibilities of bridging that gap, because once that gap is bridged, then there is a very good chance of things coming back to, the basic thing. But what I'm hearing from the Indian government, at least, is that, talks are going on well. There is a strong chance of some deal coming through very soon. And I think that's the positive.
Whenever I hear somebody say, "Kuch acha news hai kya?" It's always in the context of deal hua ki nahi. So everyone is just, waiting with bated breath, as they say, for the deal to come through. Today only, Commerce Secretary you mentioned has announced. I also heard that it could be as soon as December. And then you think it's going to be uphill?
I think that will be a good start to put things back into motion.
Okay. And tell me two good bright spots if that be the case. If it's going to be uphill, one bright spot, for example, I can give an example of is Apple, right? Despite all this turbulence, the Apple exports have continued to grow $10 billion or almost $1 billion a month now. What, according to you, are two good bright spots that both the USG and the GOI should be focusing on? Or rather just not look at that side and let them do? What are the two good bright spots?
So I think we forget one very important fact here. You see, one of the things I would say this disruption has triggered is really a hard push by India to bring about reforms. So you saw the labor laws being reformed. You saw the QCOs, some of them being put aside. And I think those are the kind of things that are really important to business. Right? Apple is a good example, but what I'm saying is that if the environment is conducive for business to grow, you will see business grow. There is no reason business would not follow a path which allows it to grow. And that is where it becomes really important that all the uncertainties and unpredictabilities are removed. And if the trade deal is that, then the two countries need to find a good spot where they can agree to something, and then the business takes over.
All right. While all through the conversation, I got the sense that I'm actually talking to a diplomat and not a business honcho. But the fact is that this is also a measure of the kind of difficult phase India and the United States relationship is passing through. Hopefully, we would weather this storm as soon as maybe this coming month. And then hopefully it would be uphill from there on. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Pleasure.